and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. Now, friends, this year we have talked to lots of brilliant people talking about branding, marketing, understanding your brand story, what to do with personal branding photo shoots. And you know what? I feel like I wanted to go one step deeper and really talk about your brand voice. What does it mean? How do you cultivate one? And what do you do if it changes over time? So my special guest today is Amber Williams. She's a master brand strategist, a copywriter, and the founder of Punky Flair, a boutique branding agency in Washington, D.C. Through her work, she's helped CEOs and course creators get their message out of their head and onto the page. Her shop has taken a new narrative approach to marketing, driven by her belief that the fact that, well, you know this, people don't buy products, they buy stories from other people. Her clients have won valuable wholesale contracts with retailers like Target, Walmart, and Sally's Beauty Supply, press coverage in publications like Essence, Inc. magazine, Elle, and Vogue, and more, thanks to her approach. So, who else could simplify this topic for us than her? I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Amber Williams. Hey, Amber.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about our conversation.
Well, I really appreciate the work that you do, and I love your website, and I think that there is so much to what you do that rings true for me. Bottom line, it's 2019 when we record this episode, and never has it been more relevant to be authentic in how you show up online, in your marketing, in your sales presentations, everything. Because I think, if I can be frank, I think we're all, as a consumers and as a public and society, getting a bit tired of the overly filtered, super perfect kind of image that people throw out there. We start to go, Is it real? Is this legit or not? What do you think?
I mean, I totally agree. I think that I always say that there's so much noise out there. There's so much clutter. Yeah. And there's been clutter, but I don't think we've ever been in a place in business where there are more options per consumer category than ever before. And that reigns true around the world. And so I agree with you that authenticity is the most important thing right now, because that's about the only thing that people cannot duplicate. Is your own true story.
Well, and you think about it, even just literally 20 years ago, how did you learn about new products or services that are out in the market? You drove in your car and you saw a billboard on the street. You maybe watched something on TV or read about it in a magazine or a newspaper. The idea of online marketing is so darn new in the whole grand scheme of things, right?
Yep, totally new. I mean, it's interesting because you can't even really search or look for what you're really looking for when you go online, when you go on social media, or when you go on your website to research something or online to research something, without being inundated with ad after ad after ad after ad. And so it's almost like brands are trying to make the choice for you before you find them based on what you're already doing. And so, I mean, it's quite overwhelming and makes it even harder to stand out as a business owner.
Yes. And the flip side of it, of course, is that we're in the day and age of technology. So I can have this conversation sitting in Nottingham, England. You are on the other side of the world. And I'm sure you, just the same as I, work with clients all over the world as well. So the possibilities are endless. You don't necessarily need a brick and mortar shop anymore to be a profitable, thriving business. So how do we then begin to cultivate a brand voice? Let's start there. How do you define brand voice?
Yeah, absolutely. So brand voice, I mean, again, it's another one of those buzzwords, right? That you hear all the time. You hear it along with brand story, brand ID, all of that fun stuff. And it's quite simple. It's basically how you sound. When you're describing individuals, or when we talk about our friends, we always say, well, that sounds like X, Y, and Z, or she sounds happy, or she sounds like sarcastic. Brand voice is simply how you sound, how your brand talks. It's expressed through word choice. It's a reflection of your attitudes and your personality. And so that's the pure definition. It's how you sound.
And can I just reveal a little secret just between you and me? We won't tell anybody else.
Yes.
Literally, probably 10 years ago. So the Simplifiers have been around 16 years. 10 years ago, I was very adamant. I was like, my business life is over here. My personal life is over here. And I'm just going to hide behind the many layers of the Simplifiers and not,
Yep.
why do I need to show up and be in the spotlight? Why do I need to be a voice in this? I was very adamant
Yep.
against it. That's
Yeah.
changed since then. But why do you think people are like that?
Oh my goodness, I think it stems from fear, and I'll share my journey as well, and kind of just coming to a point where I decided I need to move full forward with my personal name.
Yeah.
But I think it stems from fear. If you're not a part of Gen Z and did not grow up with Instagram, in your pocket,
Right.
then the idea of being so visible and vulnerable and exposed online in your personal life is quite scary, And so I think a lot of us who may have started businesses 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or some even 7 years ago, it was the best practice to set up a business name,
Yep.
A whole business identity. And then you were just the mastermind behind it, but you didn't have your own identity. It was your business, and your role was to drive that and expose that. And so now I feel like people are seeing that there is quite a blur behind what people want to see professionally and what people want to see personally, right? We see these personal brands, photographers, wedding planners, business coaches, brand consultants who find a lot of success when they kind of showcase the behind the scenes of their business, right?
Yeah.
When they make it visible on how they do what they do and why they find joy in it. I always have like this little thing I do on Instagram where I share videos of what my life looks like after 5 p.m. And I call it the night shift. And you'll see my 5-year-old running around. You'll see my 2-year-old throwing her sandwich on the floor, And so, but it works, it humanizes business and it makes business feel personal because at the end of the day, people want to connect with people, right? That's like rule number one. And so when you personalize and humanize your business, well, you're able to connect with more people. And so I feel like, to answer your question, that is the reason why more and more people are blurring that line or just straightforward with their own personal name or identity.
Yeah. And I think that for me, at first, I wanted to compartmentalize things. This is over here, and this is Mary when she's, not working kind of life. And I had my friends also very separate, like these are those friends and these are those friends. But I think it was also just a fear of coming across too egotistical or talking too much about myself and all the things that I am. So I've kind of gotten over that. I've got a podcast now.
Right.
Let's just point facts where their facts are. But the truth is that once I got over the negative self-talk in my head and go, you know what? Actually, being a small business owner is something to be proud of. And while my friends, the majority of my friends, are not necessarily my clients, do you know what? My clients are starting to become more of my friends. And so I think it's really interesting, the evolution for myself of just getting out of my own head and getting out of my own way as well, to go, you know what? Actually, it's okay to shout from the rooftops about the things you're doing. Because let's face it, social media only shows my stuff to maybe 2% of the following.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
So it doesn't. You think everybody is seeing it? I know. You think everybody's seeing everything that you're posting, but really they're not. Right.
Right. And you know what? I think that, and someone had to help coach me through this as well. There are people out there who need what we have to offer. If you have a set of skills or a certain perspective on something, or you have a unique expertise in an area that can truly transform lives, those people need to hear about you. They need to know about you. Like Marie Forleo, one of the best personal brands out there, she always says, you have this special gift. The world needs this special gift that only you have. And so it was a journey for me to feel comfortable enough even to list like press mentions like Forbes or, Black Enterprise in my bio, because I was like, oh, I don't want to brag, I don't want anyone to think I'm egotistical. But at the end of the day, that gives me credibility for someone to trust me. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think we all need to, get rid of that degree of humility to the point where it actually is detrimental to our business when we don't promote the things that we should be proud of.
Yeah. So people buy from people. People don't just buy from nameless, faceless places besides maybe Target or Walmart. But,
Right.
those are big brands. That's what you expect from it. But when you're a small business owner or lifestyle entrepreneur, they're buying because of you. You're the heart and soul and essence behind whatever products or service you deliver. Okay. So now we've got that. Now we're okay. So they're moving into the reality of, okay, well, how do I do this? How do I identify my brand voice? How do I cultivate it? And it makes me think about the hero's journey. So can you
Yes.
introduce us to that framework and how that incorporates into the work you do?
Oh my goodness. Well, actually, Mary, if I could just go back a little bit
Yeah.
to Target and Walmart, right? So even some of these very big box brands have seen the value in people connecting with people. And so, Target, when they began to introduce all these designer brands who created special collections for Target, what did they do? They told the stories of those designers. They featured their faces in the store and on the website. They do something similar with their beauty categories. If you go into a Target on the beauty shelves for some of the small businesses, you'll see the faces of the actual artisans and a little description, a little intro that gives you a peek into not just their professional life, but their personal life, And so even some of these very large brands, Uber, they started to put their new CEO in the forefront and tell his story in advertising and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it definitely works. It's effective. And I do believe it's a trend that businesses of all industries, of all sizes, are really moving toward.
Well, that is a very good point because I think we as consumers want to know where the thing is coming from, the
Right,
source of it. I mean,
right.
even think about like when you go to a farmer's market, you buy the locally raised, ethically sourced products, and you want to meet the farmers. So I guess it's in
Yeah,
essence the same kind of concept there. Okay, thank you.
right.
Thank you for
Yes,
clarifying
just
that.
wanted to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So hero's journey, talk us through that.
Yeah, so Hero's Journey, the best storytelling framework ever made. All of us who say we are storytellers have taken our juice from Joseph Campbell. And so Hero's Journey essentially is the story framework that outlines how a character goes from the beginning of a journey, quite simply, to the end of it. It starts with their challenges. It starts with the decision they have to make on how they're going to solve that challenge. It introduces a guide that's going to help them along their journey.
Yep.
And we'll talk about how your listeners should position themselves as guides. It walks through the plan that guide then gives that character to help them overcome that journey. And then the rest is kind of how they're using that plan to overcome triumph after triumph after triumph until they finally get to the reward, that ultimate success state. So when you think about marketing or a business, your ultimate success state is the solution that you're providing or offering, and more importantly, how that solution is going to make your customer feel.
Yeah.
I always say, what does the happy land look like for your customers? And then it ends with the return, how that customer takes that reward, that character takes that reward and returns back to the world that they were in and is now better and life is beautiful and everyone is happy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, if I had to simplify it.
and it is so fundamentally simple but profound in that for
Yes.
me, the big aha moment is, hey, guess what? Spoiler alert. You, the brand, are not the hero. Like you're
You're
not the
not.
hero. You're
Mhm.
you're the Yoda for Luke Skywalker. You're the
Exactly.
guide. And
Mhm.
once you start to realize that's the role you play, because I think a lot of us, and I will be the first to admit, the first 5 years of my business marketing the Simplifiers, it's like, well, we are so great. We won all these awards. We do this, we do that.
Mhm.
We, and not talking about the customer, not talking
Right.
about the outcome they would receive, the results they would receive by working with us. Huge mistake.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And a lot of us make it though.
Yep.
A lot of us make it. And a lot of the language we have on our websites talks about us, 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 us.
Right.
And I remember when I was in graduate school and in my writing class, I got this assignment and I was so cocky at 23. I just knew there was nothing this school could teach me about writing. I was the best writer in this program. And I remember when I got my first writing assignment back, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but the teacher hands you the paper and there's more red than white on the paper. And you're so embarrassed that you like hurry up and put it back in your folder.
Right.
But I remember that he told me that I had gotten a C because I had the word I, me, and my in there for 75% of my paper. And he explained that all great publications, all great brands, all great works of words, period, talk more to their audience and they pull their audience into the narrative and into the idea. And so going back to Hero's Journey, if you look at that circle, that journey that the character is on, it's not the guide that's there at the end with the reward. It's the character. It's your customer, right?
Yeah.
And that's because customers want to save themselves, right? They want to save themselves. And so that's why it's so important for your language to be customer facing about what they can do.
And so it's interesting when you say that, especially in that way, I think that just unlocks something new in my brain is that your brand voice is your voice. It is you. It's sort of like the narrative in the voice of God in the back of a
Yes.
of a blockbuster movie. Like it's the voice of reason, the voice of trust. It is your voice overall. But you are not necessarily fully in the spotlight all times, right?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you are just there to guide and to help your customer along that journey. You're there to give them the plan to save themselves,
Got it.
essentially. Yep.
So, okay, now I know that your work with your clients, it deals with something called characterization. Tell us what that means and how do we begin to utilize this in building our own brand voice?
Absolutely. So also from Hero's Journey, right? So if you think about any movie, any book, any story that you've ever heard, right? You have the star character who is facing this problem and you find out about that problem very early on.
Yep.
And then you have the guide that's going to help them solve that problem, just as we mentioned. Now, the character has a certain identity, a personality, they talk a certain way. And the guide does as well. And there's something about that guide's voice, about that guide's personality that attracts that customer to her or to him and makes them trust the plan that they have to offer. And so many times we focus on creating profiles that outline our ideal customer avatars and kind of determining what their personality traits are like, what they want, what their desires are. And then we kind of stop there and then we immediately start marketing and putting our sales copy together. And I would argue that we're missing a step. I would argue that the exact same process, or very similarly at least, that you go through to characterize your customer has to also be what you do to characterize your brand, right? Because your brand has to take on a personality that is also strong enough to connect with this customer and attract them so they can trust them. So,
yeah, give us a couple examples. Like what would those personality traits be like?
Absolutely. So let's just say you are a photographer, right? You have a photography business. And let's say that your customers, your characters are brides to be, who want to look perfect on their wedding day. They obviously are anxious about everything under the sun before their special day. They want everything to be perfect, right? And so what some of their fears are, right? Their fears are not looking perfect. Their fears are something happening to their skin or their hair not showing up right before their big moment and they take this beautiful picture.
Yeah.
And so what kind of character traits do you need to take on to make this kind of character in this point in her journey trust you? I would say that you would need to be an assurer right? You would need to be the kind of character that assures this overly anxious, maybe insecure, maybe very worrisome character that everything's going to be okay and that they're going to get that reward. They're going to get that beautiful day. They're going to get that beautiful photo, right? And so I always say that, okay, sure, we know that your brand is a guide, but what kind of guide? All guides are not the same. They can't be, right? So I have these 6 different characterizations that I always say are the most common types of guides. And so I can walk through those if you would like.
Yes, please.
Perfect. So the assurer is one of them that I just mentioned. So the assurer is somebody who is essentially selling confidence, right? Their role as a guide is to take any worry, insecurities, or doubt that their character might have and assure them that there's a positive outcome, right? So if you think about a brand like Allstate, you're in good hands with Allstate. And you look at their advertising and you look at all the imagery that they use of families. And at the end of the day, the story they're always telling is that everything's going to be okay, right? To that person who's worried that it's not going to be, right? So that's one of the characters. Another one is the motivator. So if you are the motivator kind of guide, you light a fire under people and you propel them to take action. A lot of business coaches are motivators, people who work with people who are sitting on some kind of value, some kind of gold, and they need to motivate their audience to think differently, do something differently, take action. So that's one kind of guide. This used to be me, actually. When I first started my business, my whole thing that I wanted to motivate people to do was to stop marketing and start storytelling. So I wanted to motivate them to think differently and act differently when it came to their messaging. So those are 2. Another one is the clarifier. So a clarifier works to take a set of facts or ideas or a complex situation or a big vision and unpack it and give people the specifics on how to achieve something they already know they want to achieve. If you think about Amanda Bowling, what she did it her way. She works with female entrepreneurs who want to take that leap. They already have a set of skills. They already have a certain expertise or affinity for an area, and they just need the step 1, 2, 3, and 4 for how to do it, how to get there. They're at point A or B. They know what Z looks like, and they just need to fill in the blanks.
Right. That's great.
So that's the clarifier. I am today a clarifier. So I help people get their message out of their head and onto the page. So again, taking that complex set of ideas and synthesizing it.
Love it.
Another one, the 4th one, is the cultivator. Now, this one I really, really love, and I find that a lot of women in business are cultivators. So you help people build something or bring things together. This is most often seen with community leaders, people who lead movements, people who lead professional associations, things like that, trade associations. All of those people are cultivators. You may also be someone who works with individuals one-on-one to help them cultivate ideas or get their vision together. I don't know. Are you familiar with the Cultivate What Matters journals? Okay. So their entire brand is, they are cultivators, right? They help people cultivate what's going to matter for this year so I can focus on what I really care about and set my intentions properly. So they are cultivator guides.
Love it.
The 5th one is the encourager, right? So this is the best friend, right? This is the brand that is like your sister. She's rooting for you, and she is most importantly holding you accountable to something. Again, you see this a lot in the coaching world. with people who you find accountability coaches, we find visibility coaches, and they are most certainly encouragers. They take on that role of almost a gentle fire, a gentle push. What sets them apart from the motivator is that they do have a very sisterly like tone to them.
Yes.
And the sixth one is the enlightener, right? So you help people see themselves or the world in a new way. You may open possibilities that they didn't know were there. A lot of beauty brands are enlighteners. If you go into a Sephora is only selling possibility. That is their entire premise with the gazillion lipsticks that they have in an aisle, right? They are enlighteners on what's possible in beauty. And so you may find yourself as well helping people understand new ideas or new ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. So those are the 6 characterizations of any guide that I believe really rang true in a lot of businesses we see today.
I love this. I mean, Amber, this is where your brilliance lies, because this is so fresh and different, and I've not heard this before with other brand strategists I've talked to. So you're really on to something here, because I think that when you get clear on the role that you play with your customer and through their journey working with you, then you can step up and into that role and help them get the results faster.
Exactly.
It makes me think about like, okay, if I'm hiring a photographer for my big wedding day, I personally do not want a boot camp instructor barking orders at me. Right. However, my girlfriend, Wendy, might actually want that specific type of person because she wants somebody to wrangle her massive, huge family and tell them to stand where they need to stand right at the dot, right at the right time, so she doesn't have to do that. Which, right. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? And in essence, if I could tie the whole thing together with a string, is that you want to also be true to yourself. Like, what roles do you enjoy playing when you are doing your work, right? So if you're not a natural BFF, sisterly type, you're more of a get things done, assure, selling confidence, all of that kind of person. Don't try to be one thing when you're just not, right?
Exactly. Because that's going to make the voice channeling part impossible. It's going to make it feel inauthentic.
Totally.
Yep, absolutely.
And I imagine that you would go to work going, I have to do that thing where I have to listen to her talk about things or tell about, like you're going to start to resent your work and your life and your clients and everything, because it's not, you're building a golden hamster wheel that isn't the business you actually want.
Exactly. Totally right.
So here's my next question. Well, does that role change over time or throughout the customer's buying and transformational journey with you? What do you think?
That is oh my gosh, that's such a great question. We find that 2 things. So the role of your customer and their needs can change, right? As we know. In fact, I always argue that nobody has a target customer A, B, and C. Everyone has one customer who's at journey point A, B, and C, but it's typically the same person, right?
Interesting.
But your role, to answer your question, your role can intensify, right, throughout your customer's journey, right? So maybe it doesn't necessarily shift, maybe it intensifies. So if you have a customer who, let's say, going back to that wedding photographer example, you have a customer who was anxious, insecure, scared, worrisome, and you had to play the role of the assurer and let her know that everything's okay.
Yep.
Well, when that customer comes to you again, let's say 4 years later, and now she's expecting a baby and she wants her maternity shots, is she the same kind of anxious, worrisome, or is it a different stage she's in where you now have to assure her in a different way of something different? So you still play the role of the assurer. You're just assuring them of something different in a different way. And maybe your voice has to be stronger. Maybe it can be lighter. So if this is someone who's not at the most wrecking ball stage in their life, maybe your assurance doesn't have to be as bold or as strong, right? Maybe your assurance is more of a reminder to them of who she is and that everything's going to be okay, because you've already proven that to her before, that everything's going to be okay. So that's one outcome. Another one is that your role can, in fact, change if your customers grow into different people, right? So this recently happened to me, right? So when I first started my business, I serviced entrepreneurs who were very, very early stage, right? I had some people who were at like that 3 to 5 year mark in business, but for the most part, people were in 1 to 2 years. Some people were maybe just at the idea phase, right? And so very foundational level of understanding of branding, marketing concepts. And so I had to be the motivator, right? To motivate them to understand the shift in the marketplace, to understand that, old school marketing tactics weren't going to work and that storytelling was the answer, was the future. Still believe that, right? But I had to motivate these new entrepreneurs to take the actions that they didn't know they needed to take, right?
Yeah.
Now that my customer has matured into a successful business owner who is at a minimum 5 years in business, right? Has attained a certain revenue level, even has a mini team. Now, my job is to clarify their bigger vision, right? My job is to take those complex ideas about where they're going to take their business in the next 5 to 10 years and pull that into a statement, pull that into a strong narrative that's going to carry them for the next chapter in their business. So my role has effectively changed because the CEOs I work with are bona fide CEOs who don't need motivation. They need their ideas clarified.
And I can appreciate that this kind of falls back into the 80-20 rule. Like as your clients have evolved and grown in more experience, and I'm sure also you have grown and evolved in more experience in the craft that you do as well. You're not like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're not going like, well, my whole business has changed and it's all new. You're just refining the 20%. Your curriculum, your products and services roughly still have the same foundational blocks underneath. It's just a matter of looking at the approach of delivery. Okay, at stage 6, year 6 of their business, they need this type of a guide to help them grow and scale to the next level. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Exactly. So like early stage entrepreneurs, they need a guide who is somebody that they really look up to, right? As a knowledgeable source. Well, bona fide CEOs need a guide who's more like a partner, you know what I mean? On even playing fields, different expertise, So for your listeners, you really have to kind of determine, well, where is your customer in their journey? How close or how far away from, getting around that circle from challenge to reward and return, how close are they to getting to where they want to be? If they're just starting off, then you may be the assurer, you may be the motivator, you may be the enlightener, right? To let them know about new ideas or new ways of doing things. But if they're about halfway there, then you may need to take on a different role. You may be the cultivator, the clarifier.
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. So if you're listening to this right now, I encourage you to hit pause and actually pull out your journal, set a 7-minute timer, and just start to think through it. Like, okay, well, what role does my client need right this second, my ultimate ideal client? What role do I actually resonate the most with? Like, I feel like will be the most fun, spark joy, light you up from inside, the one that makes most sense. And work through it and say, am I an assurer? Am I a motivator? Am I a clarifier? Am I a cultivator, an encourager, or an enlightener? And come back to us, because I think from here, we're going to talk about the how. So hopefully you will do the thing, do the work. Okay, so you're back. You've done the work. High five to you. And if you skip past that, hit the pause button, do the work, come back to us and do it right now. I saw you. So, okay, Amber, here's the scoop. How do we begin to craft this language? How do we begin to actually put this into action to really attract our target audience? What would you recommend?
Can I tell you, it is so simple. It is so simple. I mean, so many people believe that they need a professional copywriting magician. And, by all means, hire them when you need them. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
But your brand voice is so personal and intimate. It is one of the most important decisions you will make, that it's really something that you should create on your own.
Yeah.
And so if you guys have done the work and you have walked through these 6 different guide profiles, the first thing you can do is think of a character that's out there that is like that, right? Look to your favorite story, look at your favorite movie and see, well, who's a motivator, right? Who do I see who is out here lighting a fire under people and, propelling people to take action? Who is that, right? Mm-hmm. Write them down. Who is a cultivator, right? Who's helping people build something, and creating communities and really finding success and leading that.
Yep.
Pinpoint a specific character that you can find out there, right? I always use people like Oprah, Olivia Pope, Michelle Obama, pick a popular character who is very visible, and then quite simply, and it could be a character in a TV show, quite simply watch them talk. Mm-hmm. It's very simple. Watch them talk, right? If it's a character in a sitcom or something, watch about 10 episodes and just start to pay attention to what words that they use, how they talk, and see if that is a natural extension of your own personality. Mm-hmm. And the goal is for it to be. And then your next step is to then create a word bank, right? Just start to write down those words and phrases that Oprah's using, right? How do they say yes? How do they say no? How do they express excitement? How do they try to persuade someone to do something? How do they call people to action? How do they talk to themselves? How do they talk to their friends? How do they talk to their family? It is so, so simple. I'm telling you guys, just watch a movie, read a book, watch a sitcom, and just create that word bank and write it down. And you'll start to see those themes.
And so in that process, it sounds to me like this is an activity to cultivate awareness for yourself. Like, yes. I am naturally drawn towards that public speaker or that person who runs a small business or even that fictional character in Friends, let's say, the sitcom. And to explore why you're attracted to them. And it's not to replicate them or put your vanilla version of them out into the world, right? It's just building awareness, taking an audit, and then cultivating your own voice from there, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. Right. So the goal would be for your own voice to be very similar to that voice that you're hearing in this character, right, that you've identified. And the next thing you want to start to think about then is, okay, is this voice going to attract my target customer? So you don't want to blindly pick one of these profiles. You want to make sure, and you all, have been in business for several years. You want to make sure you have a very clear idea on what your customers' needs are. I know you all have talked about this, desires, biggest fears. And so keep that in mind, because what they need is a voice that they can trust. Right? So keep that character in your head as you create and channel this character, because the two are in the same story.
Yeah. Right. And they got to like each other.
They got to like each other.
Right.
They have to like each other.
So obvious, but it is so important to say. And yes, we have definitely done many episodes on ultimate ideal client work. Yep. And I'll put a link in the show notes for you guys if you want to hear a quick bonus episode on how to understand and identify your ultimate ideal client. Side note, those show notes are all at the simplifierspodcast.com. Just search for Amber Williams. Boom, you're there. Okay, this is great. I feel like we all have lots of homework after this, and not like super difficult homework, just simple, easy things to start to break through and have some clarity. But the real question I want to ask you, Amber, is this. And I asked this of India Jackson earlier this year, talking about brand story. And I'm curious to see how you'll answer it.
Okay.
What do you do when you don't feel like showing up on camera or being visible as the face of your brand? You know, maybe your personal life has taken a hot left turn to Hot Mess Express town, or you're just dealing with big change, or your child has just had a meltdown. Any of those things. Asking for a friend. What do you do when you don't want to show up?
Yeah, well, listen, I'm going to tell you what my coach told me. You show up anyway.
Yeah.
Because no one buys a pretty picture.
Yeah.
No one. And I remember when I have two little ones. I have a 5-year-old and I have a 2-year-old. And when I had my daughter, Kaden, 2 years ago, I was a hot mess. Like, my hair was everywhere. I just, you barely have time to even wash your face, right?
Yep.
And so I was so reluctant to get on camera. And before that, I was doing videos all the time. And I just felt like I was not this pretty picture. And then I had to remind myself that nobody in my audience was either. Nobody. And I had so many mompreneurs that were in my community who were going through the exact same thing, like breastfeeding while trying to type with one hand, like in your bathrobe, and just praying for the hour that you could take a shower. There were just so many people like that. And my coach was like, well, just put yourself out there, because I promise you will connect with people who are doing that exact same thing, feeling that exact same way.
Yep.
And she told me that if I could not get over the visual part, the fear of showing how I looked in that stage, then to, at a minimum, just record something on audio, right? So stay visible, stay connecting with your audience, keep getting your voice out there, but maybe you don't have to show your face if it's really going to drive you crazy. And so at that time, I didn't have a real podcast, but I had my own mini version, So I was recording audio notes with how I was transitioning into, being a mommy of 2, still sharing, my voice and my thoughts on branding and on copywriting and storytelling. And I would record that. And I would only have to type 3 emails in my email campaign, click here to listen.
Yeah.
Right. And it kept me relevant. It kept me connecting with my target audience. And it was a format that worked for me in my life stage. So I would say if you're in one of those kind of funky places, audio is a great outlet. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are preferring audio now over anything. But if you're not in one of those funky places, I would say that get over it, put simply, like, get over it.
Yeah. Because
what makes you human and what makes you vulnerable is why people want to hire you. It's why people want to buy from you. And it, like when you're following like a great CEO or thought leader and you see they're behind the scenes with no makeup and, their hair's in a ponytail and they're like walking down the street, it somehow makes you feel like you know them and you can connect with them and you can trust them.
Yeah.
Because they're not this hero, they're a guide. That's a human just like you.
Right. They're not on a pedestal. That's a big part of it. And I love this idea of literally using your phone, using audio recorder on your phone. It costs no money. Then downloading those files, make them an MP3, throw them into a Google Drive folder, bish, bosh, boosh, done. Integrate that straight into your, email marketing or whatever. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to launch a podcast. You don't have to do all these big, crazy things, but you can still create content. You can still create value for your audience. I also feel personally, if you are dealing with some super heavy stuff right now in your personal life, that it is okay to take a step back. You don't have to expose all the things to all the people all the time.
No.
But you can show a little bit behind the camera, and show behind the scenes of like, wow, today's a super busy day and I'm going to spend that time taking a walk for 10 minutes out in nature. And here's some ideas that have popped up. I mean, it's as simple as that, right?
It is. Yeah. Super duper simple. And you're right. If you have to take a pause, because there have been some great comebacks in business from people taking pauses, so if you have to get clarity on who you are and what your voice should be, by all means, take a pause. But if you are rock solid in who you are and your voice and what value you bring to the world, don't do your audience a disservice by not delivering that value.
And even experts have flaws, even
Oh, yeah.
experts. So don't feel like you have to overgloss it and make everything look pretty and perfect.
Oh, yeah.
So if you are intrigued by all the things that Amber is talking about today, I highly, highly recommend going and checking her out online at Punky Flair. That's FLAIR.com. Now, she is also going through a rebrand, which means she's got a whole new website coming out in January 2020. So I think it's really interesting. You yourself, a brand strategist, going through this rebrand. I mean, what's that process like that?
Oh my goodness. It is the hardest rebrand I have ever done. You know, it's always hard for you to do the things that you do for other people for yourself. And I'm sure your audience and you can agree that really stepping back and taking an objective viewpoint at your business is one of the most challenging things you'll ever do. And so I started to do that around April of this year, when I realized that my customers had in fact grown, right? And when I realized that I wanted to serve them in this growth period and not just watch them fly off into somebody else and continue working with these early stage entrepreneurs. And so I decided that, well, in order for me to continue servicing this woman, because I serve female CEOs, then I needed to elevate my message and my branding to appeal to the CEO who may have already hit the $1 million number, right? And so they don't need to understand the basics of marketing, right? They have a marketing director. So I had to figure out, well, what kind of voice can I tap into that is still authentically me, but that attracts the seasoned CEO. And so I shifted from being the motivator to the clarifier.
Right.
Because I know that their desire is to clarify their vision and put it into words, right? I had already motivated them to understand storytelling, branding, and marketing. Now they needed that vision to be clarified.
Well, it will be fascinating to see how your new website looks and how it changes and evolves, because in essence, you are stepping more into the spotlight, becoming more of the guide and less of Amber with Punky Flair, but no, actually Amber Williams in all her glory. Yeah.
Yes, my voice is intensifying. I'm
Brilliant.
so excited to share it.
Brilliant. So again, if you want to check her stuff out, you can go to punkyflair.com. And also she's got a freebie for you guys. If you want to take her quiz, it's a free quiz. Find your brand voice. And you can find that link in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. Okay, a couple of questions to wrap up. And again, Amber, thank you so much for your time today, because this is such good stuff. This, I feel like I've got tangible takeaways. I know what to do next, and I'm going to make some progress on it. Okay,
Good.
Tell us, who's one book or author that you're reading these days, or it could be a blog, that you just feel is really inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Absolutely. So I am currently reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. And so many of my entrepreneur friends had been posting this book. And I was like, all right, I got to get it. I got to add this to my list before the end of this year. Yeah. But it's about how tiny changes, just day-to-day tweaks of just 1% improvement, compound over time and create remarkable results in your personal life and in your business. So I just started it at the top of this month, and it is really, really transformative. I highly recommend it.
Brilliant. We'll put a link in the show notes for that book so you guys can check it out.
Yes.
So tell us, who's one person in your network, somebody you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things out there in the world, and we could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Absolutely. So Stephanie G. Rock is someone who I would absolutely recommend. She's doing brilliant things. She is a fellow brand storyteller, and she works with a lot of entrepreneurs, and her passion is servicing women, right, in business. And one of the things that she believes is something that I just love. She believes that in order to stand out in business, you have to stand for something. So you have to take a strong stance on an issue, on a belief, on something to really differentiate yourself from the rest. And she's brilliant. She is well-versed in hero's journey. Her and I think very similarly, but she really has this niche in how to truly stand out. So she's great.
Love it. Well, I mean, that's the reality I think I take away from this conversation and others is that when it comes to your branding, don't water it down. Don't dilute it. Don't go vanilla. Like really, truly show your true colors. And I love that, really taking a stand to a social cause, a belief, or whatever, and make it true to yourself.
Absolutely.
So Amber, gratitude and simplicity in my mind go hand in hand. Tell us, what's one thing you're grateful for right now in your life today?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I think the easy answer is my kids, of course. But as I've been going through this rebrand process, I have recognized that I am grateful for my very first career experience, which was in New York City at Armani. And my manager at the time was this fabulous guy named Patrick. And he was a hard, soulless man, okay? I was living the Devil Wears Prada lifestyle. But
oh my gosh.
I learned so much from him, and I didn't recognize the value until now. And mostly about writing and about channeling the right voice. And so you'll see that outcome in January in a couple weeks.
I love it. So where can people connect with you online? Where do you hang out the most?
Absolutely. You can connect with me on Instagram at Punky Flair. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn under Amber Nicole Williams.
Perfect.
I share a lot of thought pieces and articles there on copywriting, brand personality, strategy. And then also my new website will be launching in just a couple weeks at the top of January. So that will be the main place that you can hang out with me.
Perfect. All of those links are in the show notes, the simplifierspodcast.com. So Amber, my last question is this. And again, thank you so much for sharing this. This is a brilliant framework. I think this is going to light lots and lots of light bulbs above people's heads today. I'm so pleased.
Yay.
So let's imagine someone somewhere around the world is listening to this episode right now. She is really starting, the little hamster in her head is starting to churn around and going, oh, maybe there is something to this. Maybe. But she's feeling a little bit discouraged and a little bit timid and really stepping out and owning her brand voice. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Stop looking to your competition for inspiration on how to be you. Look within yourself.
Yes.
That's what I would whisper.
Brilliant. Do that. Amber, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.